Welcome back, everybody. I hope everyone had a good lunch break. We are going to move into our next session here. During this session, we will be discussing the challenges and best practices in cybercrime investigations with speakers from Europol, Nicole van der Meulen, and Interpol, Pei-Ling Lee. And the discussion will be led by our discussant, Dr. Hannah Ray Lee. Dr. Catherine Markham will be the moderator during this discussion and will introduce our speakers. And Dr. Markham, you can take it away.
Thank you, Andrew. Welcome, everyone, to the panel. We're extremely excited for these two speakers. I'd like to give a brief introduction for each of our speakers, and then I will let them take the floor. First, Ms. Pei-Ling Lee joined Interpol's Cybercrime Directorate in September 2020 and is currently responsible for leading, managing, and coordinating activities in relation to cyber strategy and outreach, including public-private partnerships, as well as capacity building to enhance the capabilities of Interpol's 194 member countries to prevent, detect, and investigate cybercrime. Pei-Ling is a seconded officer from the Singapore Police Force, where her policing career started in 2006. There, she held the post of Head Technology Policy Branch in the Singapore Police Force Cybercrime Command from 2018 to 2020, leading a team comprising uniformed and civilian officers to oversee the Singapore Police Force's efforts to combat cybercrime in the areas of policy, prevention, liaison training, research, and development. Prior to this, she worked in numerous divisions of the Cyber Criminal Investigation Department, for Singapore Police Force's Staff Authority for Investigation, where she was responsible for areas such as research, strategic planning, organizational development, as well as operation and contingency planning. Our second speaker, Dr. Nicole S. van der Meulen, studied political science with a focus on international relations and comparative politics at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where she graduated in 2005 with a Bachelor of Arts cum laude, and VU University, Amsterdam, with a Master of Science 2006 cum laude. In 2010, she obtained her PhD with a doctoral dissertation on digital finance identity theft at the law faculty of Tilburg University in the Netherlands. Afterwards, she worked as a cybersecurity advisor at GovCert NL, the predecessor to the Dutch National Cybersecurity Center, where she was co-responsible for the development of the first cybersecurity threat assessment of the Netherlands. She also held posts as an assistant professor at the Department of Transnational Legal Studies at VU University in Amsterdam, as an analyst as the Defense and Security Team at RAND Europe in Cambridge, UK. Before coming to the European Cybercrime Center at Europol, she was an advisor of security affairs at the Dutch Banking Association. She is currently a senior strategic analyst at EC3 and head of the policy and development team. And I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Pei-Ling Lee.
Hi, I hope that everyone can hear me properly. Thank you for having me today at this very established conference so that we can share what Interpol has been doing on our end as part of our global cybercrime program to help to reduce the impact of cybercrime and to protect communities for a safer world. All right, so next slide. How do I move to the next part? I can move on my end, right? Okay. All right. So, under the mandate of reducing the global impact of cybercrime and protecting communities for a safer world, our Interpol Cybercrime Directorate develops and leads the global law enforcement response to reduce the cybercrime threats that pose the highest risk and the most harm to communities. Now, the Interpol Cybercrime Directorate delivers policing capabilities to all member countries under the Global Cybercrime Program. This comprises three core pillars, namely cybercrime threat response, cybercrime operations, and cyber capability development. In line with Interpol's vision, our mandate is to reduce the global impact of cybercrime and protect communities for a safer world. Our objectives, which are closely aligned with the strategic goals under the Interpol Strategic Framework for 2022 to 2025 are, firstly, to develop a better understanding of the cybercrime threat landscape and to enhance information sharing, data management, and intelligence analysis to be agile and responsive. Secondly, to lead and coordinate transnational operational activities with member countries in tackling cyber threats that cause significant harm on a national, regional, and global scale. Thirdly, to strengthen the cyber strategy and capabilities of member countries to enable them to effectively prevent, detect, investigate, and disrupt cybercrime. And lastly, to be proactive and inclusive to cultivate diverse partnerships in the global ecosystem of cybersecurity to enrich our resources, skills, and knowledge as well as technical capabilities. Now, this diagram depicts the structure of the Interpol Cybercrime Directorate, which supports the three core pillars of the global cybercrime program. Firstly, under the Cybercrime Operations Subdirectorate, we work in close cooperation with member countries, private and public partners, as well as National Computer Emergency Response Team or CERT communities. So this subdirectorate leads the global coordination of national and regional operations targeted against cybercrime threat actors and groups undertaking criminal activities online. Reflecting the unique challenges and needs within the 5 regions, namely Africa, the Americas, Asia, Europe, as well as the Middle East and North Africa, this subdirectorate provides tailored operational support to help member countries prevent, detect, and investigate cybercrime. The second subdirectorate is the Cyber Strategy and Capabilities Development Subdirectorate, which supports member countries by developing cyber skills, knowledge, and technical capabilities that are customized to their needs in line with Interpol standards. So in collaboration with our stakeholders, this team plans, develops, and delivers cyber capability and capacity building projects and programs, as well as tools and platforms to enhance member countries' ability to tackle cybercrime globally. The third subdirectorate deals with cybercrime threat response. This team identifies, triages, and coordinates a global response to cyber threats in a targeted and focused manner, leveraging on our private partners' expertise and cybercrime data. We focus on intelligence development of identified threats to design disruption and prevention strategies that mitigate the high risk and high impact cyber threats. We also aim to provide quality advice and guidance as to the current intelligence and possible opportunities to conduct cybercrime operations. So as you can see at the bottom of the screen, we oversee several projects that help to augment our capabilities to fight cybercrime. So for instance, I would like to highlight the Cyber Foundation project, which has evolved to accommodate 2 delivery tracks, namely to provide data analysis solutions, as well as some cyber capabilities by providing complementary technological tools to support the communications and intelligence data sharing among our member countries. So this I will elaborate a bit slightly towards the end of my presentation. So as I mentioned, as we can see, as part of the global cybercrime trends, we can see that globally, the number of internet users has increased very steadily to now about over 4.57 billion people as per 2020. And we also can see the various impact to the global security architecture of cybercrime, whereby a single malware attack in 2018 have cost more than 2.6 million. And as of June 2020, Interpol has identified more than 200,000 malicious domains. And as we can see from global research, we The estimate is that cybercrime would cost the world about $6 trillion annually by this year, and that the number of Internet of Things devices will reach about 75.44 billion worldwide by 2025. So in this context, law enforcement is facing numerous challenges at the national, regional, and global levels in tackling cybercrime. Some examples of challenges will include the differences in legal frameworks, cross-border investigations, lack of technical capabilities and capacity to deal with cybercrime, and some of our member countries also face challenges working with industry partners and dealing with digital evidence. So to support our member countries to overcome these challenges, our global cybercrime program focuses, as I mentioned earlier, on the three core pillars of cybercrime threat response, cybercrime operations, and cyber capabilities development. And we are already working towards enhancing our public-private partnerships through Interpol's Project Gateway. So at the 88th Interpol General Assembly, held in October 2019 in Santiago, Chile, member countries have adopted a resolution endorsing Project Gateway, which is essentially a framework that allows Interpol to have data sharing agreements with private sector companies to enrich our information and resources for the purpose of conducting cybercrime analysis. So currently, we have 13 partners who provide valuable data and information related to cybercrime, and these 13 partners are what you see on the screen right now. So we firmly believe that the adoption of Project Gateway will create a momentum for Interpol to expand, enhance, and diversify our partnerships to receive more information and data. To protect our growing digital economies, a new generation of public-private partnerships is really needed to address cyber threats. And we need to build partnerships based on the shared principles of protecting all communities from cybercrime. This can be achieved by working closely with various actors existing in the global ecosystem of cybersecurity. So apart from private companies, we look to work closely with national certs, other international organizations, non-government organizations and civil societies, of course, the academia and the global law enforcement community at large. So earlier, I mentioned that under the Global Cybercrime Program, we have a few projects that looks at enhancing our capabilities as well as our member countries' capabilities to combat cybercrime. So I'd like to zoom in on some of the initiatives undertaken by these projects by introducing our cybercrime collaborative and analysis capabilities and services. So as you can see here, there are three, platforms that we have built to allow us to assist member countries in areas like knowledge exchange, in terms of coordinating operation and for data analysis. So firstly, we have launched the Cybercrime Knowledge Exchange, which is currently hosted on the Interpol Global Knowledge Hub. And this was launched with initial access for Interpol and our national central bureaus to exchange important but non-operational information on cybercrime with our peers around the world. Currently, with the official launch, this Cybercrime Knowledge Exchange is also open to police, governments, international organizations, private sector partners, and expert groups. So we do invite the community at large dealing with cybercrime to join this Cybercrime Knowledge Exchange. If you are keen to be part of this knowledge exchange platform, please contact your country's National Central Bureau, who will guide you through the onboarding process. So this platform allows real-time communication to discuss latest cybercrime trends, prevention strategies, detection technologies, and investigation techniques with our authorized colleagues. So with this, we hope to foster an international network of cybersecurity experts who are all working towards the goal of reducing the global impact of cybercrime. So this exchange platform is hosted in our secure cloud, and we employ advanced encryption technologies to allow users several ways to connect and exchange information through open forums, through a wiki-like encyclopedia where we can search, update, or create entries on relevant topics. And there's also an activity stream that's similar to your social media feeds to show you all your activity and discussions at a glance. So moving on, we also have launched a cybercrime collaborative platform for operation. This is really for the purpose of sharing cybercrime intelligence, police data, and collaborating in real time with our partners in cybercrime operations. So this collaborative platform allows us to host multiple independent workspaces, and it is a restricted access platform which enables operational stakeholders to share intelligence in an interactive and secure environment, which enhance our operational efficiency and effectiveness. So this allows the participating member countries as well as the relevant stakeholders to see the bigger picture of cyber threats and trends, and therefore they can better focus their operational resources and avoid duplication of effort. So because of the more sensitive nature of information exchange on the cybercrime collaborative platform for operation, so this platform is of restricted access, and we have only vetted platform members from our national central bureaus and law enforcement authorities, as well as international regional organizations and private partners that we have cooperation agreements with, so as to allow a very robust environment to share intelligence, which will then enhance our operational efforts. Lastly, the links, which is essentially a cyber fusion platform, is currently in the final stages of development. And this is essentially a portfolio of tools that allows us to mine, map, and research aggregated large data sets that is contributed by our law enforcement counterparts, as well as the other forcible sources of police data or intelligence in the future. So now all these three tools are not directly linked to each other, while they are able to work independently in the areas of knowledge exchange, operational sharing of data and intelligence, as well as data analysis. But within the workflow of the Cybercrime Directorate, both the collaborative and analysis platforms can work as a full ecosystem whereby actions and activities can be interrelated. So through this ecosystem that we're trying to build up by providing collaborative and analysis capabilities, we hope to support our member countries in the informal sharing of knowledge, as well as secure sharing of intelligence, coupled with the enrichment of cybercrime intelligence, so as to assist them to better fight the global scourge of cybercrime. And with that, I've come to the end of my succinct presentation of what Interpol is embarking on. Of course, I welcome any further questions that you may have at the end of this particular session. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. My name is Nicole van der Meulen. I'm head of the policy and development team at the European Cybercrime Center at Europol. And what I'd like to do in the next 15 minutes is to give you a very brief overview of what we do at EC3, how that connects to the broader field of cybercrime, and also to perhaps invite you to take a look at our website and to read further on into our publications and our activities, because we have a very limited time now. So first things first, for those who may not be familiar with Europol, Europol is an EU agency, so we have colleagues from all over the EU working for us and with us, but we also have a very large network of liaison officers that go beyond the EU. So we have both operational agreements with partner countries such as the US, Australia, Canada, Colombia, and we also have strategic agreements. And the main difference there is that for the countries we have operational agreements with, we are able to share operational case data and actually coordinate investigations that include those countries. So we do not actually have any investigative powers ourselves. Our function is purely focused on cross-border criminal activities, including cybercrime, but also other forms of serious and organized crimes, as well as terrorism. And the purpose there is, since it is focused on cross-border crime, there is obviously a need for coordination and an ability to facilitate cooperation. So that is where Europol comes in. And then specifically the European Cybercrime Center. So we've been in existence since 2013, and we've grown since then largely. We've basically split up into operations, and people in operations are doing the core business in a way in terms of supporting investigations conducted by member states and partner countries. And then we have the document and digital forensics unit, which really supports investigations beyond cybercrime. It supports any investigation where there is a necessity for document forensics. This is mainly focused on, for example, identification documentation such as passports, but also when it comes to, for example, counterfeit money. The digital forensics is really crucial in terms of being able to access data on seized devices. So a lot of times they are involved in being able to facilitate access to encrypted data. And that can be in a case of cybercrime, but it can also be in other forms of crime. It's even been connected, for example, to murders. They've played a crucial role in a number of high-level investigations there. And then there's expertise in stakeholder management, which I'm a part of. And our function is a lot more strategic. So we are focused outward. We do a lot with partners, especially partners from the private sector. But we also really engage in strategic analysis in terms of how is the threat landscape evolving and how can we represent the voice of law enforcement, especially at the EU level, by trying to identify the challenges that we face in terms of conducting these investigations and what legal possibilities are there. So in terms of what policies are in existence that are basically preventing us to move on. But to come back to operations, I just want to sort of shortly summarize what areas we focus on when it comes to cybercrime. So obviously we have the distinction between cyber-dependent crime and cyber-enabled crime. AP Cyborg is a team that is very much focused on cyber-dependent crime. So that mainly includes ransomware, other forms of malware, distributed denial of service attacks. AP Terminal is focused on non-cash payment fraud. So a lot of what they have to deal with contains social engineering, credit card fraud, but then digital credit card fraud. But they also focus on cases of jackpotting. So on being able to gain access to the money of an ATM through logical attacks. So purely by attacking the information system of an ATM. AP Twins is focused on the online distribution and production of child sexual abuse material. And then we have some horizontal teams. So the dark web really supports many different forms of crime. The idea there is that we have colleagues that purely focus on what's happening in the dark web. So they're obviously also connected to colleagues that focus on drugs, that focus on migrant smuggling, weapons, because everything is available on the dark web. And then we have cyber intelligence, which also really tries to support all other teams in their investigations. Then we also have a very dedicated team, the Joint Cybercrime Action Task Force. I'll move on to that one and then I'll come back. So this is really a dedicated task force, and it contains all these countries that you see in the picture, so many different agencies, and we have liaison officers from all of these countries in this task force. So they're with us physically, they're even in the same office, and they're also joined by people from EC3. And the idea there is that we can really identify what cases to prioritize and to focus on and how they connect to these different countries, because that's the whole point of really moving forward. It's by drawing connections between different incidents in different countries. It could be that a suspect is in one country, a victim in another, and the server in a third country. How can we bring all of that together in order to actually conduct an investigation? So we have the law enforcement colleagues from all these different countries, but we obviously need other partners and we cooperate with other partners. We do this also when it comes to agencies. So the EU clearly has other agencies, including ENISA, which is the Network and Information Security Agency. We have the European Defense Agency. All these agencies also focus on the broader topic, I would say, of cybersecurity. But in the program board, for example, we also welcome colleagues from Interpol. So the idea there is that we come together, we share what activities we're working on, and we try to focus on how we can deconflict and better coordinate what we are doing. So even though we have a different agenda, we do share a common interest. And the purpose of coming together is therefore to see how we can do that most effectively and most efficiently. These are the private partners. We have 3 advisory groups, what we call them: communication providers, financial services, and internet security. What we basically try to do there is work with them on a strategic level, but they're also often involved in our operations, as you'll see a bit later on. So just a final note on the JCAT in terms of what outcomes this has brought about. They've supported, as you can see here, 79 high-profile operations. And that is really like many of the operations that you see made public. So through our press releases, a lot of times they've been supported by the JCAT. I just wanted to mention a few operational examples for you to get a bit of a better feel of what is Europol involved with. This is a very recent example. So Sky ECC was a provider of encrypted devices. And what is very specific about Sky ECC and last year about EncroChat is that they catered almost non-exclusively to criminals. So obviously, if you're familiar with the field of cybercrime and the abuse of legitimate services, you know that encryption is being abused by many criminals in order to avoid detection, in order to avoid access to evidence. But since encryption is a fundamental part of cybersecurity, it makes it very difficult to see how can we possibly do anything about that from a law enforcement perspective, because we also really value it and we understand the importance of it. So we especially try to do in this scenario is to focus on service providers that we encounter during other investigations. So this is not just cybercrime. Basically, law enforcement encountered criminals using Sky ECC, EncroChat in many other investigations. Like I said, it can be other forms of serious and organized crime, such as drugs, weapons, murder. So then it becomes a focus of a broader investigation, and we actually try to see what can we do about the provider itself, but also how can we gain access to the encrypted devices, so to the provider, in order to actually gain access to the criminal communication, which will then help to support subsequent investigations. So this is really a double approach. And on the one hand, you want to take away a valuable tool from the criminals, but on the other hand, you want to see how you can gain access to crucial information and intelligence in order to really start many other investigations, so what we would call spin-off cases. So Sky ECC came after EncroChat, really access to a lot of intelligence. And basically what happens is, since there's multiple countries involved, obviously Europol is there to coordinate and facilitate, as well as Eurojust, which is our legal EU agency. Another really big case this year was Emoted. So Emoted is actually a type of malware that was probably the most sophisticated and the most prominent, and was a spin-off that had already sort of a spin-off of a banking Trojan from 2014, just to give you an idea of how long it was going on. But we managed to take down the Emoted botnet at the start of this year. So the idea really is to say, okay, what big fish are there and what impact can we make? Here are some statistics in terms of what we took down: over 500 servers. What was also really important about this case, I would say, is the cooperation between law enforcement and the CERT, so the computer emergency response teams, because it's one thing to take it down and to try to basically destruct the infrastructure of the criminal network, and then subsequently to try to identify the perpetrators and arrest them. The other element, of course, focuses more on security and victim remediation. And that's really why we try to cooperate with computer emergency response teams, in order to ensure we also actually are able to sanitize in a way the victims, and also to make them aware and to prevent further fraud. In the area of non-cash payment fraud, we have what we would call a recurring action. So some of the previous examples I mentioned, SkyCC, Emoted, those are very dedicated actions, take a lot of time to prepare, but we also have recurring actions to make sure we can make a more structural impact in a way. One of those is against money mules. Money mules are obviously a fundamental part of a criminal operation because you don't want the money to be traced. So what we do is we have a dedicated week, sometimes a bit longer, every year. We've been doing this since 2016. As you can see, a lot of countries are involved, but we also involve the banks and other financial institutions. So that really comes together in order to identify money mules, to interview them, to arrest them, and to really stop fraudulent transactions from taking place. In the area of the dark web, once again, one of the main focuses is on takedowns, so takedown of dark web marketplaces. But at the same time, it's also about gathering intelligence before you do that takedown. So intelligence about vendors, such as suppliers, but also about buyers, to see what perpetrators can we actually identify. So we go beyond destructing the infrastructure. We also obviously try to identify and arrest perpetrators. What we did several years ago, which really made an impact, was that the Dutch police was actually able to get control over the Hansa marketplace. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. And in that way, they continued the operation. So they were pretending to be the criminal, but that's how they managed to get a lot of intelligence and then subsequently identify vendors and go after them. Then in terms of CSE, we really try to obviously identify perpetrators, but we also have a dedicated task force every year in order to identify victims in the actual material that we come across. And the reason for that is we really try to identify them in order to safeguard them from further harm. We have been able to safeguard for 411 victims, but what's also really happened is that we've developed another initiative for those victims that we were not able to identify at all. We basically ran out of leads. So what we do is we identify objects in the photos. We of course take away all the personal details, and then we post them online in hopes that people will help us. So it can be a t-shirt, but it can also be a location like a hotel room, and then we put it on Twitter, and then people can say, actually that hotel room is in country X, and then we can then continue the investigation. And that has really helped us. I'll just briefly end now because I'm going over time. I really welcome you to take a look at the IOTA on the Europol website. This is our flagship document and contains our view of the threat landscape that is publicly available. And I also welcome you to take a look at our awareness campaigns that are also on our website, where we really try to make people aware of how to be safer. And this will really be my final note. One of our most successful prevention and awareness campaigns has been No More Ransom. If you ever fall victim to ransomware, please visit it, but also visit it before for handy tips how to avoid falling victim. But the idea of No More Ransom is twofold: to make people aware, so in the area of prevention and awareness, but also to really offer them decryption tools if they fall victim to ransomware. So the victim remediation has been extremely successful. And on that note, thank you very much. My apologies for overrunning by a minute. Look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Senator CRIC, for the opportunity to be the discussant for this session during the 2021 Whitehead Conference. Prior to start the discussion session, I would like to thank both Pei-Ling and Nicole for the great presentations. To help better understand both agencies' efforts, I would like to ask questions to Pei-Ling first, then Nicole. If we have enough time at the end, we will open the discussion to the public. Pei-Ling, thank you for providing the blueprint for the Interpol strategic framework for the next 3 years. For our audiences who want to know more about the recent cases that Interpol successfully led and reinforced, Can you provide an example of recent transnational operational activities demonstrating the importance of coordinating different parts of global ecosystems of cybersecurity? If possible, it would be great if you can provide an example that Interpol identified as areas requiring enhanced cooperation, such as corruption and the financial crimes, cyber and cyber-enabled crimes, and environmental security.
Thank you very much for the question. I see that there are two parts to the question that you have just posed me. The first one about recent cases that Interpol has successfully led and reinforced. One recent example that came to mind and is quite reported in the public domain is Operation Falcon. So this is an Interpol operation against organized crime group responsible for distributing malware and carrying out phishing campaigns and extensive business email compromise scams. So this has been a year-long investigation which is still ongoing, whereby the Interpol Cybercrime Directorate worked together with our financial crime unit, which is under the Organized and Emerging Crime Directorate. So both these units, we have worked closely with our private partners, Group IB, as well as the Nigerian Police Force via the National Central Bureau to take swift action against the perpetrators. So I just like to highlight that the participation of Group IB as a private partner came under the ambit of Project Gateway, which I've shared earlier, the framework that allows us to cooperate with private partners and receive threat data. So following this joint cybercrime investigation, there were 3 suspects who were arrested in Lagos, Nigeria in late 2020. So these 3 suspects were alleged to have developed phishing campaigns by having phishing links, domains, and mass mailing campaigns whereby they impersonated representatives of organizations under the guise of purchasing orders, product inquiries, and even providing COVID-19 aid by impersonating legitimate companies. They then use these campaigns to disseminate 23 different malware programs, spyware, and remote access tools. So these were then used to infiltrate and monitor the systems of the victim organizations, as well as individuals before they launch various campaigns and to siphon away funds from all these victims. So as I mentioned, investigation is still ongoing, but as we understand, this gang is believed to have compromised government and private sector companies in more than 150 countries since 2017. And while investigation is still ongoing, we believe that we have identified more than 50,000 victims so far. So this is a really prominent and successful example of how Interpol works with our law enforcement agencies in our member countries as well as the private sector to launch a successful operation against cybercrime. So if I remember correctly, the second part of your question is about an area that we feel requires enhanced cooperation, Financial Crime Task Force. So as a start, we will comprise a small number of countries such as Singapore, the United States, the UK, and Ireland. So this task force will be looking at illicit money flows in transnational financial crime, such as cyber-enabled fraud and money laundering schemes. So for a start, we will cover 3 priority areas, such as schemes or scams that defraud the national financial aid relating to COVID-19. We also look at cyber criminals that exploit communities by distributing fake or counterfeit COVID-19 vaccines, or to dupe these victims to give charitable donations. And lastly, another area of focus is also on BEC campaigns. So we hope to create a global anti-scam network to link the various operational units in law enforcement to share intelligence as well as to coordinate operations to deal with financial crime and cyber-enabled crime.
What a great examples. I look forward to hearing many more success stories from the Global Financial Crime Task Force at Interpol. Now, I would like to ask a question to Nicole. First of all, thank you, Nicole, for sharing the great examples of European Cybercrime Center. Online child exploitation is a crucial area requiring not just EU member states, but also all other countries' attention. According to the United Nations, however, online child sexual exploitation is a complicated area because there's no agreed upon definitions of the term child and sexual exploitation. Besides, not all states have laws that make the act a crime. Fortunately, however, your presentation demonstrated that European Cybercrime Center has been successfully combating several online child exploitation cases. Can you demonstrate how the agency addresses such legal issues while investigating? Also, please explain other possible challenges the agency experienced and ways to solve the problem.
All right, definitely. Yeah. So I actually specifically took this question to my colleagues, and we don't have so many problems in terms of definitions. Obviously, at the EU level, there's been a directive in place which focuses on the combating of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse of children. And in that directive, it's very clearly stated that a child is any person below the age of 18 years. And it also really outlines what we consider to be child sexual abuse material. Unfortunately, the directive itself still uses the concept of child pornography, which we do not, and that still has to be changed. And all the countries that we cooperate with have comparable law. So in that sense, we do not have challenge in that area. Our biggest challenge remains being able to gain access to information, but also being able to process that information. So we receive a lot of referrals, for example, through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they receive these referrals from online service providers where they have flagged either by a user or by themselves illicit material, so material that could be child sexual abuse material. And we receive those referrals from many of the member states at Europol, and then we subsequently pass these on to the member states, and we help them to figure out whether it actually pertains to child sexual abuse material, and then to start an investigation. However, because of legislative developments in the EU, it's no longer possible, or at least for a while, it was no longer possible for providers to pass on these referrals. So we are in a constant battle between being able to receive those referrals, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, there are many privacy concerns that also goes to the move from several providers and social media companies to implement end-to-end encryption. And if end-to-end encryption is implemented, obviously they will no longer be able to see what material is being passed between users. So they'll no longer be able to flag if it is child sexual abuse material, and won't be able to pass on that referral to us. So encryption is really, or end-to-end encryption when it comes to providers is really one of our biggest challenges. We try to address this, and we try to obviously maintain dialogues that take into consideration the different interests, but it is a very challenging area.
Thank you, Nicole. The information you provided about the legal issues are very informative. I will definitely going to use it in my classes. Since we have 5 minutes, I would like to open the discussion to the public, and the public already sent us a lot of really good examples, good questions. Among them, I will gonna be specifically asking the one particular question which both of you can answer. So one of the audience was asking, how can we as academics assist and collaborate with Interpol and Europol? Does any one of you want to go first?
Maybe I can go first. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the developing of capabilities is an important area to us, such that we dedicated a whole subdirectorate to look into this area. And this is currently the area that is under my charge as well, as acting assistant director in charge of the subdirectorate. So we are constantly on the lookout of possible collaboration opportunities with external entities. So of course, that is not restricted to just private sector companies. We also look out for good opportunities to work with academia, and which we have in various areas, including conducting capacity building activities. Like we have conducted training together, for instance, with the Korean National Police University, for instance, to conduct capacity building for our member countries. We also collaborate with them for perhaps areas of research, if it is possible for all these academic institutions to develop possible solutions to various challenges that are being faced by member countries. We also welcome such collaboration opportunities as well. Even in the area of digital forensics, this is not an area that's directly under the purview of the Cybercrime Directorate, but the Interpol has an innovation centers that look into emerging areas or emerging technologies, which may include darknet, AI, cryptocurrencies, etc. So Interpol as a whole, we are definitely on the active lookout to have a collaboration with the academic community.
Nicole, do you want to add?
Sure, yeah. I guess it's a bit different for us. We have a very formal cooperation in the sense that within the EU, obviously, we have a lot of calls for research. So we are actually engaged with a number of academic institutions and other partners under what we call Horizon 2020, which are funding schemes that come from the EU, where we really try to work on sort of long-term challenges. A lot of that has to do, for example, with artificial intelligence. How do we manage big data, machine learning? So they're formal partners because they're co-applicants, basically. So we're always open to being approached. And then we do, for example, it could also be that an institution is leading its own proposal together with partners. Then sometimes they approach us either as a partner or to issue a letter of support saying we deem the research proposal valuable. And then, of course, we have quite an elaborate assessment process in order to decide whether we're going to get involved and how, and that is quite formal. Within the EC3, we actually have, it's dormant at the moment, but we have an academic advisory group, which will need to be revived. And my main idea there is that we don't really have funding, of course, for academics, but it's to stay in touch, really to have people who are willing to be in touch with us in terms of what is the latest research in various areas, but at the same time that we could potentially help them in terms of identifying relevant research questions or things of that nature. That's mainly, I would say, our focus. Sometimes we have ad hoc cooperation also in the area of training, for example, as was already mentioned, we developed, like, for example, a serious game on cryptocurrency training with an academic institution. So there's also ad hoc possibilities. The main thing, though, is that we don't have any money, for example, to fund research. I think that's something that always needs to be mentioned.
Okay.
If Hannah, I'll just like to add on as well. Under the Interpol Cybercrime Directorate, we do have a Interpol Global Cybercrime Expert Group, which looks into 3 areas, mainly investigation, research is one area, capacity building is another area. So we have these 3 subgroups, whereby this group is actually a collective that allows us to reach out to the external sectors, which includes academia, whereby we can then share best practices and contribute in these different areas. This is should I say by application only kind of group. So if our friends from the academic community are interested to join this collective, please feel free to engage us so that we can then give you more information on how we can onboard you onto this group.
Thank you very much. I would like to open further discussion to the public, but I do not think we can extend discussion since we are under strict time restriction. If you have any questions for the presenters, please contact the presenter via their contact information they provided during the presentation. Again, I would like to thank both of you for sharing such a valuable session. I'm pretty sure everyone, especially practitioners, scholars, and students will appreciate the information you provided today.
Sorry, I had to take myself off mute. Thank you to everyone who attended. We hope you really enjoyed this panel, and we look forward to seeing you at the rest of the White Hat Conference. And I believe we have a few minutes of break until our next panel.